Hello, I am Nick Johnson, and welcome back to the Classical Pairings Host Challenge, brought to you by the National Bank of Indianapolis. This season, we are having young professionals in Indianapolis send me a couple things. They're letting me know their favorite local brewery or distillery and their favorite type of music or band or whatever. Any type of music will do. I'm coming up with some way to pair this all together and also recommend a piece of classical music along the way. It's a lot of fun. It's a way for us to support some local breweries and distilleries and connect over music. This week, we have Emily Smith, a local laboratory technician here in Indianapolis. Let's see what challenge Emily has for me.
Hi, my name is Emily Smith. I am a laboratory technician at a laboratory in downtown Indianapolis. We do sample processing for major research studies, and I run SNP genotyping on DNA samples for research and quality purposes. My favorite type of music is pop, and my new favorite brewery is Brew Link Brewpub in downtown Indianapolis. So thank you for having me, Classical Music Indy, and good luck with the challenge.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. This challenge was really fun because I've never actually been to Brew Link, and I love being recommended to go to a new place. So I actually went there this weekend, and I did what we're going to call research for this, where I sampled several of the beers there. In my day job, research usually means going to a library or an archive, but my night job is more fun, and apparently research means going to a local bar. But anyway, I tried several of the beers there, and I really enjoyed the Ivory Stout, it's a white stout that we're going to be talking about here in just a little bit. As we're going to have fun playing around with it in some different glass types. But first, a little bit about the music that I've decided to use for this. So I've come up with two pieces, a pop piece and a classical piece, that I think pair really well together, and I think are going to pair well with this beer. First of all, for the piece of popular music, we're going to be going with Janelle Monáe. This is her album Dirty Computer. This is our copy of it from 2018. We're actually going to go with the title track of this album, Dirty Computer. It's the first one. So Janelle sort of mixes hip-hop, pop, and R&B in her music. And this particular song, she collaborated with Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. There's actually some elements of Pet Sounds, for example, that I hear in this. In this piece, which is a fun and enjoyable piece of music, but she's sort of exploring, she herself is the dirty computer, and she's exploring that even though I am filled with glitches and bugs, at this moment here right now, I am going to choose to love you. So it's kind of inspiring. It's also a very kind of humble piece of music, especially for such a highly acclaimed artist. And there's something about Janelle Monáe that even this cover, that, if she, look how cool that is, right? This is a modern diva in such a way that is, I think even as somebody who comes from, who listens to all sorts of different musics, I can definitely really appreciate her ability to write and produce and arrange and do all sorts of amazing stuff in her music. So the classical piece that we are going to pair this with is from the opera Manon by Jules Massenet. So this opera is from 1884. In this opera, we have the main character, Manon, who is going to be going to a convent, but instead decides to run away with her boyfriend. And then while she's running away, she ends up falling for an older, richer man who promises her all sorts of riches. She falls for that temptation. She lives the high life briefly before inevitably she will end up regretting her decisions. But the aria that I chose, that I thought actually in a way sounds kind of very similar to Dirty Computer, is, and I do not speak French, and I am almost certainly going to butcher this pronunciation, and I know that there are classical music people whose heart this might break. I apologize. But my favorite aria, and probably the top aria from this, is Obéissation conduire voix appelle, which that's sort of how you can find it. We'll put a link for how you can actually find the piece with the proper pronunciation. Anyway, in this piece, we have Manon, who is sort of celebrating beauty and youth and saying, live life to its fullest while you can, while you have your beauty and your youth. Now, of course, a seasoned opera goer will know that it's a little bit dark, and it's a little bit coming from a broken heart, as she's also been sort of reminiscing on the man that she left to leave for this older, rich man. And so these two pieces of music, first of all, musically, I think there's some similarities. They're almost at the same tempo, and you can kind of actually sing the melody from Manon to this piece by Janelle Monáe, and you will end up with, it actually fits really oddly well. But even with the themes of the music, there's sort of a little bit of deception in both, and a little bit of kind of hidden depth, and sort of professing one emotion while also kind of, in a way, sort of hiding another, or at least allowing it to exist in the undercurrent while trying to very boldly look forward to the future. So finding joy, maybe despite realism, if you will. Okay, so for our pairing, we are going to be using the Ivory Stout here from Brew Link. And I decided to do something a little bit different this time, because normally I would make a cocktail right now, but since they've already done the work for me, this beer is already delicious. I don't need to do anything to it. I've decided to do something where I'm going to try it in 3 different glasses. Because when you go to bars, especially at craft breweries like Brew Link, you're going to get all sorts of different glasses with different types of beers. I thought maybe it would be fun to actually just try this in 3 glasses and see, does it actually change the experience? And so the pairing is going to be which one of these glasses, we have a frosted beer mug, we have a pint glass, and we have a snifter. Which one is going to best kind of accentuate this beer and somehow match with these musical ideas? I don't know which one I'm actually going to choose. I haven't actually tried this until right now. I'm kind of looking forward to it. So I'm going to start pouring. So the Ivory Stout from Brew Link is it's sort of a deceptive beer in the sense it's hard to talk about beer and pour it without a huge head on it. I'm discovering as we do this, but that's okay. There we go. As you can see, it looks like a fairly typical kind of, maybe even almost an IPA sort of a color, but it's very rich and malty and stouty. So it's therefore a little deceptive in the way that it looks versus how it tastes. As a white stout, it is just brimming with notes of vanilla and toffee and sort of malted butterscotch. It's really quite enjoyable, and is in that way, again, just sort of like it doesn't quite taste like how it looks like it's going to taste. By the way, they also recommended when I was there, they tend to mix the Ivory Stout with other types of beers. They have a peanut butter and chocolate beer that they mixed it with. It was quite good. And then they had a blueberry sour that they mixed it with. I, to be totally honest, kind of prefer it just by itself, because it is a beer that holds up very well. All right, there we are with this ridiculous experiment. And are you asking, is he going to drink all this beer? And yeah, probably, but probably not during the end of this episode. Probably with dinner, which we're going to have here in just a little bit. So what I was curious about is how is the glasses going to affect the appearance of the beer, the smell of the beer, and the taste. This was the most important element. You can already tell a little bit, especially like the snifter, I'm noticing is sort of the way it like quickly frosted the glass. It sort of has a more amber color than the others, which is quite interesting. The smell from the snifter is very sort of pointed and direct. Wow, there is actually a big difference there. Okay, so from the smell from the snifter, I really only got 1 or 2 of the notes. I got coffee. Basically, it smelled like coffee. Whereas a pint glass, which is giving me kind of a bigger, wider look, I'm getting far more of the toffee and far more of like the butterscotch that I didn't really notice in the other one. And in the frosted mug, to be totally honest, I'm getting nothing. I know people tend to drink beer at a frosted mug, but I think that probably tends to be when the beer isn't very good. To be totally honest, this is a very good beer and probably doesn't need an ice cold mug. And in fact, I mean, seriously, like I cannot smell this at all, especially compared to these two, which weren't chilled. I mean, of course, the beer was cold, but mixed together, I'm not getting it all. So I'm going to now see if these taste at all different. This is a very good beer, by the way. There is it's a very sort of smooth, caramely finish on the top of it. If you're looking for a hoppy beer, they absolutely have hoppy beers there. I'm not a big hops guy, to be totally honest. The sneaky trick is that we tend to put sweet vermouth in our hoppy beers because then we tend to like them. But malty and stouts are by far my favorite beer. And this one really holds up. This is really fantastic. It's a 5.1 ABV. Which, so it's very drinkable. You know, a lot of breweries will do like 12 ABV stouts, which are also quite enjoyable, but, you know, you can't really do very many of those without feeling the effect very quickly. So anyway, this is a beer, it comes in, you know, these large cans, but it's absolutely, at 5%, that's not like a huge hit of it. Again, the smell out of this is much more subdued than the smell out of the pint glass. And I think because of that, the taste isn't quite as good. I'm realizing right now. To be totally honest, I was deciding, I thought I was going to like this one the most. And that's because I wear pocket squares. Like, I like fancy cups. And I thought that I was just going to like swirling it around in here. But to be totally honest, with this sort of a beer that has so much going on, I think I'm losing a lot of that. Whereas if it was maybe like a spirit, like cognac or something, I think that would be able to cut through the glass. And let's try the beer mug here. That just tastes like cold, which is good, I guess, if you like that. But seriously, honestly, I am getting absolutely, like, I cannot taste this. One thing I noticed at the bar when I was chatting with our waitress is that this beer actually got better as it warmed up. A lot of stouts, I think, do that, where a little bit of warmth, you start to notice more and more flavors. Just like with wine, if it's a little bit warmer, you can actually taste more of what's going on. Usually to be really cold is kind of just about masking the flavor. And if you're drinking a cheap alcohol or a cheap beer, you want to mask the flavor a little bit. In this case, with a really good beer, you actually don't. So I am pleased to announce that the winner is a regular old pint glass, which you probably have. So even if you don't have these fancy glasses, at least for this beer, you don't really need them. Because with this glass, first of all, it's a little thinner glass, so it's actually warming up the quickest, which for this beer I actually want. I want this beer a little bit warmer than fridge temperature so that I can actually taste all the notes. Whereas with the snifter, the way you hold it, you can't quite do that. And with the frosted beer mug, it's just way too cold to actually really taste anything about what's going on. If you're going to drink out of a frosted beer mug, drink a worse beer is my recommendation. That's my professional, I have a PhD recommendation for you. All right, so there we have it. Now, what I love about this beer with it pairs with the music, there is, as I said, there's something kind of deceptive about it. And again, the look of this, I promise you, it does not taste how you think it tastes by looking at it. And a little bit of that goes on with Janelle Monáe in the album Dirty Computer and with the character Manon in the opera, where what you see is not actually what's happening. It's not actually what you get. And so I thought it was kind of a fun way to pair the three of these together. Also very smooth and very approachable for all of them. Even on your first taste of this, you're not going to notice everything. But as it warms up, you're going to notice more and more flavors. You first listen to Dirty Computer, you're not going to get all the references. You're not even going to, you're probably not going to notice all the musical connections that she's making with all of her guest appearances and guest stars, that sort of thing. With Manon, as with many operas, you need to sometimes watch it a couple times before you really see how the characters are interacting. Maybe see a couple different performers perform the roles and you start to learn more about that character. And so I think that, yeah, Emily, I hope you agree with this pairing. So Classical Pairings is a listener-supported program. If you like what you hear, you can text PAIR, P-A-I-R, that's to 202-858-1233, so that we can keep bringing you future episodes pairing classical music with great local craft food and beverage makers. I'd like to thank my challenger, Emily Smith. If you're interested in being a challenger for the next season of our Classical Pairings Host Challenge, you can email info@classicalmusicindy.org for more information. I'd like to thank our production assistant, Chloe Bolter, and our producer, Ezra Baker-Trupiano, for their great work, and of course, our friends at the National Bank of Indianapolis for their generous support. So, I'll see you next time. Cheers!